What is up, everybody, and welcome back to Slide Into Sports, live on 103.1 FM on WVLP Radio. I'm your host, Ryan Schleier, aka Schlide, and NBA playoffs, they kicked off pretty much as soon as last week's episode was done, and, well, really, since I saw you guys last week, so we're definitely going to be talking about that. Primarily, we talk about college sports, rules and regulations, and the trickle-down effects that they have into each of the college sports. But since college sports is kind of on the back end of all the seasons right now, and professional sports like NBA, NHL, MLB, WNBA, like all those professional sports are starting to really kick off into their season, or they're at their grand finale almost. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that. NFL draft is coming up as well very, very soon. And there's a lot of important things to talk about with the NFL draft. A huge pick change happened, or I should say exchange happened for the New York Giants as they made a trade they traded away Dexter Lawrence to the Cincinnati Bengals for their number 10 pick. So the Giants currently occupy number 5 and number 10 on this year's draft board, which is huge. There's a lot of speculation going around as to who the Giants are going to pick. The Magic shock the number 1 seed Pistons in the Eastern Conference first round of the playoffs. And normally these NBA playoffs are set up to where the top seeds are meant to come out on top, which I'll get into more on my thoughts about the NBA playoffs in a little bit. We also get to see Wemby's first playoff game, and let's just say he did not disappoint. And again, we're going to be going more into this as we go on throughout this week's broadcast. And we're going to talk a little bit about the enhanced games, because there's a little bit of a shift in narrative that the enhanced games is going into, and it involves peptides. And peptides is something that has actually been talked about a lot online. And there's a lot of discussion as to whether people should be for the peptides or against the peptides. So we're going to go a little bit more into that as well. So that's pretty much the lowdown of this week's broadcast. So starting off with the NBA playoffs. So the biggest results so far, because again, we're still pretty early on. We've only seen, like, most of these teams have only played their first game. Some of them played their second game last night and are going to be playing their second games tonight. But number 8, Orlando Magic's, like I said earlier, took the first game from the Detroit Pistons. Now, normally the way the NBA playoffs work, if you didn't know, 7-game series for each round of the playoffs. The higher seeded team or lower seeded team, depending on how you look at the seeds, like if you consider the number one a high seed, then that's the high seed. Some people consider number 1 the low seed because it's technically the smallest number. So again, really depends on how you look at it. But the way it's set up is that the majority of each of the 7 games are played at the higher or lower seeds' home arena, and then it flip-flops. So the first game was played in Detroit, second game is going to be played in Orlando, third game in Detroit, fourth game in Orlando, or some combination like that. So yeah, 4 games would be played in Detroit, assuming it does go to a 7-game series. 3 games would be played in Orlando. Yeah, Orlando, they end up getting the upset win over Detroit, 112-101. Probably, no, not even probably, but easily the biggest upset so far in this NBA playoffs. A lot of the other teams that were favored won in their games, so Orlando kind of being a little bit of an outlier there. Oklahoma City Thunder, they crushed the Phoenix Suns 119-84. Shouldn't really surprise anybody just because Oklahoma City returned everybody. They returned all of their talent from last year's roster, their championship team roster, I should say. And Phoenix, they traded away Kevin Durant. I believe they have Dylan Brooks now, just not as solid of a Phoenix team that we've seen or that has been there. I think their best player right now is Devin Booker, but Dylan Brooks is a very controversial NBA player, to say the least, and not a lot of people like him. Let's just say that. But yeah, Oklahoma City still looks like the favorite. No surprise there. And then we've got San Antonio beating the Portland Trail Blazers 111-98. The Spurs are the number 2 seed, so they played this game at home. And not too surprised. I think to some people, the outcome was a little bit surprising because it was Victor Wembanyama's first playoff game since being in the NBA. And, everybody always says, not even just with the NBA, but with every sport, that playing in the playoffs or the championships or, the postseason event that defines the entire season, it's a different environment. And Wembanyama just went in, did what he does, put up 35 points, and he only played for 33 minutes. So he put up more points than minutes in this first game against Portland and did not disappoint. He just went in there like it was just any other day, any other NBA game, and did his thing. So San Antonio, I think they could, at this point, make a run, maybe even upset Oklahoma, assuming that San Antonio and Oklahoma make it to the Western Conference Finals. But really liking this San Antonio Spurs team. They've been pretty consistent all year, and Wemby looks great. He looks really good. I believe this is his 3rd year. It's either his 2nd, 3rd, or 4th year. He's still pretty fresh in the NBA. So, but yeah, still first time in the playoffs and dropping 35. I mean, that's pretty incredible. Boston, they took care of business against Philadelphia, 123-91. Philadelphia team is a little bit younger than years prior. Obviously they have Embiid, but otherwise they have a lot of relatively fresh talent on their roster. And Boston, very much a veteran roster. They obviously got upset last year by the Indiana Pacers, which was pretty surprising. Wait, no. I'm mistaken. That was not what happened. But they didn't make it as far as they would have liked in the NBA playoffs, and that was in large part due to Jason Tatum tearing his Achilles, and he was one of their biggest pieces on that roster. Obviously, him and Jaylen Brown, those are probably their 2 big pieces. They also have a lot of other players that complete the depth, but Jason Tatum is kind of seen as the leader of the Boston Celtics, at least, on the team. He seems like the team leader, or Jaylen Brown. But yeah, either way, they didn't make it to the finals last year, so now they're looking to make a run this year back to the NBA Finals Championship. Cleveland, they beat the Toronto Raptors in their first game, 115-105. Both these teams have pretty young rosters as well. I'd say Cleveland has a little bit more experience on the Toronto Raptors right now. Wow, my tongue just had a knot in there for a moment, but yeah, the Toronto Raptors lost 115-105. Like I said, relatively young roster for Toronto, but they could still make this a series with Cleveland, possibly, considering it was only a 10-point loss on the road. So it's not a terrible position for Toronto to be in, but obviously being down 1 game isn't very helpful for them. And then Minnesota Timberwolves beating the Denver Nuggets 119-114. I think out of the first round series games that we have in the NBA playoffs, I think the Denver Nuggets, Minnesota Timberwolves are probably the closest matched teams out of each of the matchups that exist in the NBA playoffs. I'm not even sure it's really close. And I mean, that's kind of surprising just because, there is a lot of desirable I mean, normally there's a little bit more parity, I feel like, but second round, there's bound to be some kind of parity if Houston is able to come out on top over the Lakers, which right now the Lakers are ahead 1-0. So not looking good for Houston. And the main reason why I'm bringing up Houston here is because of the storyline with Kevin Durant facing either his first former team, the Oklahoma City Thunder, or facing the team that traded him earlier this year, the Phoenix Suns. So there is a revenge match kind of looming there, assuming that Houston is able to crawl out of this 1-0 deficit that they have right now. But overall, with the NBA playoffs, Oklahoma City is up 1-0 on the Suns. Lakers are up 1-0 on the Rockets. Denver and Minnesota are tied 1 apiece. San Antonio is up 1-0 on the Trailblazers. Celtics are up 1-0 on the 76ers. Knicks and Hawks are tied 1 apiece in their series. Cleveland's up 2-0 against the Raptors, so not looking good for the Raptors. Like I said earlier, it looks worse for them right now. And Orlando's up 1-0 on the Pistons. So there's a little bit of parity going on. There's also some outcomes that are a little less shocking, like Cleveland being up 2-0 on the Raptors, kind of for the reasons that I said earlier, just that, they have Donovan Mitchell, they have more depth on that Cleveland roster than the Raptors do on their roster. But yeah, I think next round should be pretty enticing. Again, like I said earlier, if Houston's able to come out on top over the Lakers, they're either going to go up against the Thunder or the Suns. So you've got that Kevin Durant storyline there. If Orlando wins, that could be a big run for an 8 seed. They would play either Cleveland or the Raptors. I think that could be pretty interesting as well. Atlanta, if they somehow get past the Knicks, which I don't think they will, because the Knicks have they have a solid big three on their roster. Atlanta, not so much. They're a pretty cohesive team, though, so I could see maybe Atlanta getting over the Knicks just to create some more parity in the East. But they would either go up against the Celtics or the 76ers. I imagine that the Celtics should come out on top over the 76ers. In years prior, would have been a lot less certain on that, but the 76ers have been kind of on a downward trend since 2 years ago, and it just hasn't looked as great for them. Atlanta, kind of surprised that they even made it into the 6th seed just because, they trade away Trae Young. A lot of people were questioning that trade and what they got for it. But they end up making it to the playoffs as a 6th seed. So, good for Atlanta. But yeah, that'll be Atlanta, I think, will be a tough out for the New York Knicks, but if we get a Celtics-Knicks rematch, that could be interesting as well, because I think that's what I was thinking of last year when it was the semifinal match, or not semifinal match, but leading into the semifinal match. That's when Jason Tatum towards Achilles and lost to the Knicks, and the Knicks went up against the Pacers. I think that's the sequence of events that I was thinking of. But anyways, then got San Antonio versus Portland. I don't think that's going to be pretty eventful, to be quite honest. This is the first time we've really seen Portland back since Dame Lillard left, and kind of like Toronto, fairly young and fresh roster in comparison to some of these other teams in the West. So I don't really anticipate them going too far. San Antonio going up against either Denver or Minnesota, that will be a series for sure. That's going to be a very eventful series, to say the least. Wouldn't be surprised at all if it goes to 7, just because of how talented those 3 teams are and the potential for those matchups that are going to be brought. So yeah, just some fun storylines for the NBA playoffs there. Just to go over, just looking at this bracket right now and seeing how things are playing out, I do like the Thunder to repeat. They keep their entire roster. They have a deep roster. very cohesive team. The only thing, though, is that we haven't seen the same team win the NBA championship. We've seen a different team win the NBA championship in the past, I believe, 7 years. So there's currently a trend going on where a different team wins the NBA championship each year. So following that trend, I could see San Antonio coming through and getting it done. I think if the Pistons are able to get out of this 1-0 deficit with Orlando, I could see them possibly doing it and shocking everybody. Boston could also make a run just because they could be on a revenge tour with Jason Tatum. I think Boston feels like they should have been in that spot last year instead of the Pacers, but that's just not how the cookie crumbles sometimes. So ends up being the Pacers versus Oklahoma City, and that was a very fun series to watch. I actually thoroughly enjoyed that series because of how much fun it was. You had the dominant team, the Oklahoma City Thunder. Everybody thought they were going to win, but then you had, this small little Indiana Pacers team. People counted them out pretty early. They make it all the way to the NBA Finals. They take it to Game 7, and then Haliburton tears his Achilles. That was terrible. I remember watching that game. That was so sad. I was in Bloomington watching that game with a couple of my friends, and we were we were not happy, to say the least. But that it is what it is. Obviously, the Pacers didn't really have their best season, and no one really expected them to, just because of Haliburton being out and other injuries and trades that took place. So they just had a completely different team going into the season. So not too surprised, but at the same time, this kind of benefits them. They're going to get a lottery pick. They can pick from an elite talent pool. I actually talked about it a little bit on my socials, on TikTok and Instagram, with the Warriors not being in the NBA playoffs, which is very shocking, to me at least, just because I pretty much grew up seeing the Warriors and Stephen Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, all those guys in the playoffs every single year consistently. And now none of those guys are in the NBA playoffs this year. But again, super talented draft class coming in. I think this will actually serve as a benefit to the Warriors, just to get some fresh young talent onto their roster that I think could make pretty big impact early on. You've got great players to have them develop under. You've got Steph Curry, Draymond Green, like Jimmy Butler, all those guys on that team. Great players to develop under. So I think Warriors not making the playoffs might actually be the best thing that happens to them this season, because again, the way the lottery pick works to me is just, it's really weird, but the Warriors could end up getting the number 1 pick because of the way the lottery pick works. So yeah, I think last I checked, it was like a 14% chance or something like that where the Warriors end up with the number 1 pick. So yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be fun to see if the Warriors do end up getting that pick, and just seeing who they end up picking. Okay, moving on to the NFL draft. The biggest update that I can give you guys so far is, like I said before, Dexter Lawrence, who's a defensive tackle on the New York Giants, or should I say was on the New York Giants, gets traded to the Cincinnati Bengals for the number 10 overall pick. So the New York Giants now have the number 5 pick and the number 10 pick. Now, there's a couple of different angles that New York could go with this. Some people have been speculating that New York goes quarterback. Personally, I don't think they do that. I don't think there's any reason for them to do that. They have Jameis Winston. They have Jackson Dart. Like, they have 2 solid quarterbacks right now. They really don't need another rookie quarterback. Jackson Dart's only been in this league for 1 year. So, again, why would you get a quarterback? And I mean, the next best quarterback after Fernando Mendoza, who currently is the consensus number 1, nobody has shifted off of that. The Raiders haven't shifted off of that, even though they brought in Kirk Cousins. They want Kirk Cousins to help the development of Fernando Mendoza in the NFL. they're kind of thinking a little bit long term. But right now, the consensus is that Fernando Mendoza is the best quarterback by a pretty decent margin in this draft class. I think then Ty Simpson would be that solid number 2, and then there's another significant margin there, and then you've got the rest of the quarterbacks in this draft class. And maybe I'm looking at it wrong just because, you've got other quarterbacks in this class that were looking to be good. And part of the reason why they might not look as good right now is because of what happened in their regular season. You look at Drew Aller, who's in this quarterback draft class, got injured midway through the season, wasn't really performing the way he wanted to perform, the way that Penn State wanted him to perform. And then you also have Cade Klubnik as well, who looked like he was seeing ghosts this year throughout the entire season. But the year before that, they both looked like elite quarterbacks. So sometimes things just happen and it shifts the narrative of what the draft class of quarterbacks looks like, going into the draft. But I wouldn't be surprised if the New York Giants end up getting themselves more help on defense or even on offense. They could get themselves another weapon to just on the outside. I could see them possibly doing that. But yeah, 5 and 10 picks to get skill players outside of the quarterback position, I think was a smart move by the Giants. You've got a new head coach in Jim Harbaugh, No. That was wrong. Not Jim Harbaugh. Why is there? There's there's so many Harbaughs, but John Harbaugh is who I meant to say. I was just, again, college football brain here, not NFL brain. So I was thinking of Jim Harbaugh, even though he's now in college, or in the NFL, but he was he was the more recent Harbaugh that was in college football. But yeah, John Harbaugh, currently the coach of the New York Giants. This is going to be his first year, and having 2 top 10 picks, I think, is going to be crucial for the New York Giants. So I think that ends up being a pretty smart move by the Giants to trade away Dexter Lawrence, who I believe is 28. So he's kind of in his prime right now. He's going to have an immediate impact on this Cincinnati Bengals roster. And the Bengals did need help on that defensive side of the ball. So I think both teams ended up coming out winners here in this trade. Maybe the Bengals got fleeced a little bit, but the fact that they only had to trade away the number 10 overall pick for Dexter Lawrence, I think is a pretty even trade. Now, if they had also traded a second-round pick or a second-round pick next year, or both a second-round pick this year and second-round pick next year, that would have been a little bit too much, but I think this is a pretty even trade and will end up benefiting both teams. But yeah, just some other things to note. 7 first-round picks have been moved entering draft week this week, including deals with Sauce Gardner, Micah Parsons, Trent McDuffie, Jalen Waddle, and Dexter Lawrence. Well, I already mentioned Dexter Lawrence, but Sauce Gardner, Micah Parsons, Trent Duffy, and Jalen Waddle. Obviously, the Micah Parsons trade, that happened last year, but that's going to have an impact on this year's draft. And then you also have Jalen Waddle. That was a more recent trade that occurred. Don't be surprised if there's more trades that take place leading into this draft. If any of you viewers have seen Draft Day, that movie, that's one of my favorite movies. Actually, I love Draft Day. It's, they changed the name of some of the players in the movie. That at least, it's a true story. It's kind of a true story, but they changed the names of the players, and again, based off a true story. But either way, it's a really fun movie to watch. My favorite part is when there's the trades that are happening on draft day that causes all kinds of chaos in the top 10, and it just really shows the unpredictability of the NFL draft and what teams can do in those 7-8 minutes that you have to make picks. because you can make trades in those times as well. So, yeah, it's really hard to make predictions on who's going to go where in the draft because people can make trades. Like, it's just, it gets absolutely insane. So, yeah, again, don't be too surprised if there's more trades that happen. NFL data has shown that 10 to 12 first-round pick trades is pretty normal. So, again, don't be surprised if you see more trades happen. Because sometimes people make trades to make another trade. Well, to at least complete a trade that they are trying to make with another team. Again, like I said earlier, Fernando Mendoza expected to be number 1 pick for the Las Vegas Raiders. Considering the fact that they've had Fernando training like at their training camp, learning the Las Vegas offense, like we've seen a lot of Fernando in Las Vegas. Don't be surprised at all if he gets picked. It would be a surprise if he didn't get picked number 1, simply because of the reasons that I mentioned before, of Fernando being in Las Vegas, learning the names of his teammates or future teammates, learning the offensive schemes, all that stuff. Like, there's no way that Fernando doesn't get picked number 1. It's there. It's okay. I mean, that's why he's a consensus number 1 pick. But yeah, Giants drafting a QB unlikely. I don't like them drafting a QB. I don't understand the reason for it. I really don't understand the reason for it. I mean, if it was next year, because next year there's supposed to be a lot of quarterbacks to pick from, and they're supposed to be better than this year's quarterback class. But like I said before, regarding this quarterback class, a lot of things can happen. You don't know what happens next year, whether it's injuries or just poor season, like just not as good of a season as you wanted or expected for your team, etc. Like, you don't know. All right, with that being said, we're going to take a short little break to hear a message from our sponsor.
This broadcast is brought to you by Authentic Impact, a Northwest Indiana executive coaching practice working with family businesses to ensure their legacy. When you started your business, you made a promise to do things differently, better than anyone else. Over time, as the business grows, that promise can get diluted or even lost. Penny Schleier at Authentic Impact helps family business owners reignite that promise, weaving it into team engagement, performance, and hiring so your passion becomes the heartbeat of your company again. Learn more at authentic-impact-coaching.com.
Okay, so now we're going to move into the enhanced game. So we've been kind of poking at the enhanced games bear, so to speak, in terms of coverage, just kind of looking at it, anticipating it, looking at how they're approaching this, because this is a pretty unique event, to put it plainly. I mean, if you're new listening, basically enhanced games it consists of 3 sports: running, or I should say track, swimming, and weightlifting. And how it works is you have the option of using the products that Enhanced Games provides to help with performance, to enhance the performance of the athletes. In the case of swimming, and I'm more speaking on this just because of my experience and knowledge on the sport of swimming, you can either use the products of Enhanced Games under doctor supervision. You can also use the super suits. And to those of you that maybe aren't familiar with what super suits are if you watched the 2008 Olympics in Beijing, that was when the super suits were a thing. That's when everybody was using the super suits, and almost all the world records were broken in the 2008 Olympics. Some of the world records were broken in the 2009 World Championships a year later in that summer. And that's when the suits got banned, just because of how much faster, because of how much of an impact those suits had. And suits have evolved since then to use different materials and whatnot. That's just kind of a cold summary, I guess. But you can either use, again, like I said, you can either use the products from Enhanced Games with the doctors and the suit. You can also only use the suit, like the Faskin suit, without using the Enhanced Games products. You can use neither of them. You can just use the normal tech suits, no Enhanced Games products, and compete in the Enhanced Games. One of the main ideas of the Enhanced Games is to offer more money to people that participate in these sports. So if you break a world record, I believe the prize money is $1 million or something like that. If you win your event, you also get a pretty decent amount of money as well. I don't think it's $1 million, but I think it's almost $1 million. It's $500,000, I'm pretty sure. That might be slightly off, but I don't think it's too far off. But really close. Like it's in the hundreds of thousands, but that's in comparison to, like, at least with swimming, again, because that's kind of where I know a lot of. That's what I know the most of, and that's what I can compare it to easiest. But when it comes to swimming and prize money, if you look at the what is it called? It's a different organization now. World Aquatics, their prize money for breaking world records, for winning events, it's in the tens of thousands, not in the hundreds of thousands. So the prize money it's smaller. It's significantly smaller than the Enhanced Games. Now, I might be a little bit off, maybe breaking a world record or winning a gold medal. It might depend on the event. Like, I know World Cup, a little bit of a smaller event in comparison to the Olympics and World Championships. I know those, like, prize money for that is in the tens of thousands, so like 15,000, 20,000, somewhere in that range. Olympics, I think, is in the $100,000 to $200,000 range if you win an event, break a world record, etc. But with the Enhanced Games, at least I've seen athletes from, like, either kind of outside of their prime in kind of their later years, I guess, to say it nicely. I don't want to necessarily call them like oldies or anything like that, but people that are outside of their prime are participating in the Enhanced Games because they're getting money just to participate in these games. And one of the most notable athletes that is participating in the Enhanced Games is Cody Miller. You also have Hunter Armstrong as well. At least those are two notable American athletes that are participating in the Enhanced Games. You also have Ben Proud of Britain, and something that's relatively common, at least with these guys, is like they're all kind of on the back end of their career. Not necessarily like they're still great swimmers, but they're not where they were in their prime. So again, kind of in their later years. So they're essentially going for a paycheck. They're essentially there for the paycheck. Some of them are there using the performance, I don't know how else to put it, but the PEDs that Enhanced Games is offering and creating for these athletes. Some of them are only going for the suit, just to race in a Faskin suit, and like that's fine. Like, it is what it is. But one of the main things that is anticipated with these Enhanced Games is whether or not it's going to last. Now, a lot of people are thinking that this is probably a one and done thing, or we see it maybe for a few years, like 3 years, 4 years, something along those lines, and then it just kind of goes away. But I'm not entirely sure if that is going to be the case, because people get older, that means you can get new swimmers. And depending on how well this goes, how much money is made, how many people attend the event, all of those factors, which all of those factors really combines into one factor, which is money. How much money is involved in this event, whether it be athletes getting paid, coaches being paid, the vendors that are there that are not enhanced games, so like the sponsors that are there that are buying ad space, the people that are broadcasting the event, how much money are they going to be making? How many viewers are going to be tuning in to the enhanced games, which I anticipate there's going to be a decent amount, just because I think there is a natural curiosity about the enhanced games, whether you're in any of these three sports, lifting, track, or swimming, just to kind of see what's what. Some people, I imagine, are probably also going to be hate watching, just because they don't like the idea of using performance enhancing drugs to help improve performance. A lot of people see it as cheating. And it's like, yeah, I'm kind of in the middle. I lean more on the side of yes, that it's cheating, but it's more because it's something that not everybody has access to. It's kind of like with facilities, like you look at people that, like, let's just say you're a swimmer, and you look at Lydia Jacoby. She made the Olympic team in, I think it was it was for Tokyo. She made the Tokyo Olympic team from Alaska, and there was no 50-meter pool where she trained. She did not train in long course meters, and yet she went and made the Olympic team, which she had to swim long course meters in order to make the team, because the Olympic trials is in long course meters. So she trained, like, she had a huge disadvantage to all of her competitors, or a majority of her competitors, because there are more long course meters pools now in the 48 states, and there's more being built everywhere. There's now one where Lydia Jacoby grew up, so now there is more availability for training for long course meters, but it's not something that everybody has it's not something that everybody had access to, which is why people consider using PEDs cheating, because not everybody can pay for PEDs. Not everybody's able to use them. So because of that, people are like, you know what? It's cheating. It gives an unfair edge. That's why it's banned. It's like, if not everybody can use them, then nobody can use them. That's kind of the philosophy that kind of goes behind using PEDs. Now, something that everybody does have access to is practicing hard, training hard, a strong mentality. Everybody can build a strong mentality. You don't need PEDs to do that. There is an argument about PEDs being used simply for recovery. It helps the body recover faster, which allows for better performance in training, which then translates into racing. That's kind of the other side of the argument there. And speaking of the enhanced games and their stance, because originally their stance was, it was almost like they were trolling World Aquatics when they first came out. I don't really know how else to put it, but it kind of felt like they were trolling a little bit when they were like, you know what, screw you guys, we're going to do our own thing, and we're going to allow the athletes to use and do whatever they want to be their fastest. And some people like what Enhanced Games is doing, because it brings up, like, they enjoy seeing the peak human form trying to, break the world records or set new standards, whatever. Like, just seeing the peak of what male or female athletes can do. And some of these people believe that the PEDs help these athletes get to their actual peak. And one of these things, and this isn't necessarily with enhanced games, but this is something that is going on outside of the enhanced games as well. It's something that's kind of become a trend, not necessarily in sports, but even just in bodybuilding or just lifting. And that, of course, is peptides. So enhanced games, they actually backed the FDA decision on reclassifying certain peptides in the United States. This is kind of huge. It at least shows that the enhanced games is, they're for performance enhancing drugs, but they're not reckless. That's pretty much the only word I can think of here that can really describe this stance. I think they're still in their stance, but they're also kind of establishing their own line for what is and what is not a illegal PED. I don't really know how else to put it, because all PEDs are illegal, like in the IOC and World Aquatics and all these other organizations that contribute to the IOC and enforce their rules. And yeah, and peptides just kind of became a big thing. I don't really know exactly where it came from. I don't know if it's because of the looks maxing trend with clavicular. I don't know if, I'm assuming that some of you guys know who clavicular is, but basically he does this thing called looks maxing and does all these weird things to, I don't really know how to describe what he does except calling them weird, because it's definitely unorthodox from what I've seen. One of the things that I saw him do to sharpen his jawline was like taking a hammer and like hammering right here to define his jaw. I don't know. It was really weird. Didn't really make much sense to me, but I don't really know enough, at least more than what I've seen, to endorse or not endorse it. I probably would not be taking a hammer to my face or doing, I think he does cocaine instead of Adderall, so that's also not good. So no cocaine. But yeah, I think the peptides they became a thing because it supposedly helps you get more muscular or more ripped faster in a not so natural way. I think that's pretty easy to, yeah, that makes sense. So it's a really strange thing that just kind of came about, but that I really saw peptides being brought more into the discussion when people were making, or were at least mentioning these peptides, not necessarily in their videos. I have seen people mentioning peptides in their like short form videos on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube Shorts, whatever, but I've seen it mentioned more in the captions or in like a visual graphic where it has words, like a caption graphic where it's on the screen and not underneath it, like it's in the video, I guess, but it'll say something like not using peptides or no peptides, I'm natty, or something like that. And yeah, that's kind of what got me down that rabbit hole to begin with, to be completely fair. Because again, I didn't really know what looks maxing was or what peptides were, and that like you're just seeing it a bunch everywhere. I'm like, okay, what the heck is this? What are we doing? What are these peptides things that everybody's, going up in arms about or just yapping about? And yeah, it's interesting to say the least, but yeah. So kind of moving on a little bit, we have about 15 minutes left. Okay, so first I'm going to just kind of do a brief little summary, and then we're going to move on to the Saving College Sports executive order, just to kind of clarify a few things. And if I'm not mistaken, just because there's even more speculation on how legal, I guess, this executive order is. So, there hasn't really been too much about the executive order the past couple of weeks, just because of everything that's been going on in the world, really just across the world. So it's been eventful, but yeah. So the traditional Olympic, so just kind of summarizing the story again. So traditional Olympic and anti-doping groups are still hammering the event over athlete safety and legitimacy, and that's really the best and only angle, at least to this story, that kind of exists, not necessarily the concerts. I've seen some of the pictures of what the venue is going to look like. It's very luxurious. I think that's probably the best way to put it. Very comfortable seating. It goes all the way around. Kind of, there has to be a track in there, so it kind of has to go all the way around in a circle. But there's a pool in the center. Got an area for lifting, kind of in the middle of the track as well. You've got some of the field stuff for track. And there's long jump, high jump. And that's something you'd normally see on a track anyway. Obviously, besides the 50-meter pool being there, but it's besides the point. You've got pretty nice scoreboards. It might look slightly different. This is just what I've seen on graphics. It's just like the base design for it, but very, again, luxury seating. Kind of like the boxes. I don't know if you know what box seats are like at a baseball stadium or football stadium, where you see the celebrities up there and they have an area where they can eat. There's TVs up there. There's cushy chairs that are up there as well. There's a lot of that in the enhanced game stadium. So it's really, they're trying to make the viewing experience as comfortable and as entertaining as possible. And I'm really curious to see how that's going to fill up, the types of people that are going to attend this event in person. It's over the course of 3-4 days. It's May 21st to May 24th. So exactly a month away. But yeah, it's definitely going to be something interesting to see. Okay, now we're going to move on to college sports, Saving College Sports executive order. So kind of, and not really surprised, because this is something that I said in the last broadcast that I talked about this, but the age eligibility rule is the biggest controversy, and that really shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody, that, or at least, after I said that was going to be an issue, just because after I read through the executive order, that's where I saw the least amount of clarity, was the age and eligibility, little bit of things conflicting with each other that were written in the bill that just didn't add up. 1 + 1 did not equal 2 in this case, but now, more people are starting to notice that as well. Says, so just to kind of re-summarize this for anybody new here, maximum 5-year participation window, 1 free transfer with immediate eligibility, 2nd transfer only after earning 4-year degree. And it also pushes tighter NIL pay for play regulation, restrictions on athletes returning after going pro. That more applies to college basketball than college football. We haven't really seen any pros returning from the NFL or other professional leagues to play college. I really hope that doesn't happen, but they haven't really needed to do that. And threats to federal funding for schools that don't comply, and that's the big one. The biggest skepticism is, again, like I said, the age and eligibility. But the other part of this speculation and skepticism is whether or not this can actually even be enforced and how they would enforce it, because NCAA rules are already under heavy antitrust pressure after cases like Alston versus NCAA and House versus NCAA, which, again, I said this in a previous broadcast, but I don't know why Grant House was not invited to that round table. I don't know why now Alston was not invited to that round table. Having those outside voices, at least from the athlete's perspective, like just having athlete voices in there, I think was crucial. I think that was a huge miss to not have college athletes participating in that. And even people from the Democratic Party participating in that as well. I think just having people with different viewpoints really would have helped push the facts that this is supposed to be a bipartisan thing, that it really encouraging the facts that everybody needs and should get behind this thing, but that's not what happened. So now, in my mind, I'm thinking this executive order is probably going to fall through and not end up being enforced. Now, obviously, there is some things that I do like in there. I do like having just the 5-year window max. I think that is a pretty decent number. Like the one thing with the transfer window is with coaching. I think if your head coach gets fired, you should still be allowed to have a transfer, like to have the option of following your coach or to choose whoever else you want to coach for the remainder of your college career. I think that is one thing that I would add in there if it's not already added in there. I don't remember seeing that in there. It might be in there, but again, I don't remember seeing that in the executive order. But being able to transfer after your coach leaves, I think, is important. It'll at least, that's a little bit of wiggle room that you can and should be able to give to these athletes, just because they might have gone to that specific school for the coach. Like, imagine if, and this will not happen. I don't think this will ever happen. But imagine if Indiana fires Curt Cignetti, right? For some reason, we go back to being the old Indiana, and we go 3-9 in year 3 under Cignetti after winning the national championship. And the athletic director and the president, everybody involved, decides, you know what, we're firing Curt Cignetti at the end of the year. I think the players that, a lot of these guys, especially now, came to Indiana because of Curt Cignetti. So they should be allowed to follow Curt Cignetti if he does end up leaving. I think that's only fair because, you go to a school for education, but you also pick your coach based on your development as an athlete, and not even just as an athlete, but as a person as well. Because at the end of the day, these coaches that are at these schools, they serve as mentors. I mean, just like just like professors do for non-athletes and athletes as well. Like the professors that are at these schools, they serve as mentors to the students that are on campus and even off campus. I mean, you're able to reach back out to professors if you ever need to. I mean, they give you their email. They always like it when you reach back out to them. So, just giving the athletes the chance and the option to follow one of their mentors wherever they go because they believe that they can take them to the next level, I think is important. I think it's crucial. And it'll at least, again, it'll give the athletes something. It'll at least give them something more. Now, I'm not saying add an extra year of eligibility because they transfer. That's not what I'm saying at all. No. I think 5 years should be the max. I don't think it should be more than 5 years. 5 years is a little, or 5 years even is really a little bit kind of pushing it, but that's more because for undergrads, like, it typically takes 4 years to do an undergrad, but lately it's been kind of leaning more towards 5 years, but that's besides the point. Some people take 3. There's no required time, I guess, or no like designated time to get your degree done. You could do it in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years if you so choose. I wouldn't advise doing that just financially because that's a lot of money, but yeah. But yeah, again, just kind of going back to the skepticism, headline, reality. So little skeptical still on how this is going to be enforced, whether or not this is even going to be enforced, because this is, again, A, it's an executive order. It's not a bill. B, NCAA already has a bunch of antitrust rules that some things in the executive order might not be able to apply just because of the laws that are there. And C, just, again, the fact that there was the miss of having athletes, everybody on all sides of the political aisles coming together. I think that that was just those were two big misses on this roundtable and on this executive order. Because, I mean, one of the things that I've learned, at least just in my years of being alive, now granted, I've only been alive for 23 years, so, I'm not a prophet by any means or anything, but something that I've learned so much just from talking to people from a variety of opinions, variety of experiences. You can learn so much from so many different point of views. And oftentimes I come away with some of my best solutions or some of my best approaches to problems or situations or whatever that, like, after talking about it with people that either have experienced something similar or, just they've lived a different lifestyle, whatever. Like, I learn a lot from a lot of different people. That's essentially what I'm saying. So yeah, I think that would have worked really well with this executive order. And I think if that was the case, it probably would have became a bill quicker, or it probably already would have been a bill at the end of the day, if you think about it. But yeah, that's all I've got time for today. If you missed this week's episode or broadcast episode, you can listen again to this week's one on Friday. If you missed the beginning, maybe hopped on at 2:30 instead of 2, but you can catch the beginning on Friday. I also post the broadcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Millions.co, Patreon, and other podcasting platforms as well. I also post on socials. I post on TikTok and Instagram for short form video content. Every once in a while, I'll put a tweet up on Twitter or X. I don't know what else to call X posts. I just call them tweets because, I'm sorry, X is a terrible name for a platform. Sorry, I had to say it. Somebody had to, but yeah. That being said, I'll see you guys all next week with my take on the NFL draft and more. Slide out.